What if the operating system you use every single day suddenly became obsolete? Imagine the platform that defined personal computing for nearly 4 decades slowly fading into irrelevance. It may sound extreme, but this is exactly what is happening right now. A silent revolution, a strategic maneuver unfolding beneath the surface of the tech industry. This isn't about a shiny new Linux distribution or another alternative operating system. It's about a deeper transformation that will affect the devices you buy, the software you rely on, the way you work, and even the strategies of tech giants. What we are seeing is not hype. It is a genuine tectonic shift in computing. Here's what makes this fascinating. It's not happening through direct confrontation. No company is declaring war on Microsoft. Instead, multiple forces are converging to make Windows less relevant with each passing year, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by accident. To understand the present, let's remember how Windows achieved dominance. In the 1990s, Microsoft conquered the market by becoming the default on every PC sold. Software companies built for Windows first, hardware vendors designed for Windows compatibility. But here's a detail most people don't know. Microsoft actually paid PC manufacturers to not offer alternatives. The infamous per-processor licensing meant that even if a computer shipped without Windows, the manufacturer still had to pay Microsoft. This made offering Linux economically impossible. Bill Gates once said Microsoft's goal was to make Windows a drug that people can't live without. For 2 decades, they succeeded. At its peak, Windows commanded over 95% of desktop market share. But every monopoly contains the seeds of its own destruction. The assumptions that built Windows' dominance, desktop-centric computing, exclusive applications, hardware dependence, are rapidly eroding through forces Microsoft never anticipated. Linux distributions were once confined to hobbyists and developers. But the biggest boost to Linux adoption didn't come from Linux evangelists, it came from Google. When Google released ChromeOS, they essentially created a Linux distribution for mainstream users without calling it Linux. Millions now use Linux daily in schools and offices without realizing it. ChromeOS became the Trojan horse that normalized non-Windows computing. The web itself became the real game changer. Progressive web apps and browser-based tools eroded the concept of native software. Here's a mind-bending fact. Photoshop, the application that kept millions tied to specific operating systems, now runs in a browser. Adobe spent decades fighting web alternatives, only to eventually embrace them. The pandemic accelerated this shift dramatically. When millions suddenly worked from home, many discovered their Chromebooks and tablets could handle most tasks. The complexity of Windows began feeling like overkill for email, video calls, and documents. But perhaps the most unexpected development, artificial intelligence is making operating systems less relevant. AI assistants handle tasks that once required specific software installations. Why install photo editors when AI modifies images through web interfaces? Why maintain local software when AI generates code, design, and content on demand? For decades, Windows meant Intel, the famous Wintel Alliance, but that partnership is crumbling in spectacular fashion. Apple's M1 and M2 chips didn't just improve performance, they redefined expectations. All-day battery life, silent operation, instant wake-up. But here's what's really remarkable. ARM Linux applications often run better through emulation than native Windows software runs on x86 hardware. The compatibility layer became superior to the original platform. The ARM revolution extends far beyond Apple. Amazon's Graviton dominates cloud computing, NVIDIA's ARM chips revolutionize AI workloads, and even Microsoft's Surface devices experiment with ARM processors, which frequently run Linux applications more efficiently than Windows ones. There's an environmental angle gaining serious traction. ARM processors consume dramatically less power, requiring less cooling infrastructure. As companies face carbon footprint pressure, ARM Linux systems provide compelling business cases beyond just performance. For years, gaming was Microsoft's strongest fortress. DirectX and Windows-only games created an unbreakable bond. Then Valve shattered the myth of Windows exclusivity. Their Proton compatibility layer makes thousands of Windows games run better on Linux. Lower latency, superior frame rates, better battery life. The Steam Deck proved this to millions who never intended to become Linux users. Valve invested millions to demonstrate that Windows gaming exclusivity was artificial, maintained by inertia rather than necessity. The plot twist? Microsoft's own gaming strategy accelerates this transition. Xbox Game Pass streaming works flawlessly on Linux. Microsoft is so focused on cloud gaming that they're making their own operating system irrelevant for entertainment. New games increasingly ship with multi-platform support from day one, using Unity, Unreal Engine, and Godot, all of which treat Linux as a first-class platform. Here's the ultimate irony. Microsoft itself leads the charge to make Windows irrelevant. Office 365, Azure, Teams, their most profitable products, work identically across all platforms. Microsoft's own cloud infrastructure runs more Linux instances than Windows ones. When you use Office 365, your documents are likely processed on Linux servers. Microsoft has become one of the largest contributors to Linux development, despite Linux being Windows's primary competitor. This represents a fundamental strategic shift. Microsoft makes more money from a Linux user accessing Office 365 than from someone buying a Windows license. The economics have flipped. Windows became a legacy product within Microsoft's own business model. Modern development accelerated this transition. Docker containers and Kubernetes orchestration favor Linux environments. The entire DevOps ecosystem evolved around Unix-like systems, making Windows feel like legacy infrastructure trying to catch up. Financial arguments against Windows go far beyond licensing fees. The real costs hide in productivity losses and maintenance overhead, forced reboots during business hours, patches breaking workflows, driver conflicts consuming IT support time. Here's a fascinating case study. Munich switched 15,000 computers from Windows to Linux, then back to Windows under political pressure, then to Linux again. The financial data was clear. Linux saved millions in licensing and reduced support tickets by 40%. When BMW analyzed their total cost of ownership, Windows licensing represented only 30% of actual costs. The other 70% was maintenance, support, and productivity losses. Linux reduced both categories significantly. But the most compelling economic argument is future-proofing. Linux systems deployed a decade ago still receive security updates and run modern software. Windows machines from the same era are obsolete, creating costly upgrade cycles that Linux environments avoid entirely. Creative professionals were historically held hostage by software availability. Designers, video editors, and 3D artists needed Windows or Mac because that's where professional tools lived. The creative landscape underwent a quiet revolution. Blender became a Hollywood-grade 3D tool, rivaling software costing thousands. DaVinci Resolve provides professional video editing, competing directly with Adobe Premiere. Web-based tools like Figma revolutionized design collaboration, while Canva democratized graphic design. AI is reshaping creative workflows in ways favoring platform-agnostic tools. Stable Diffusion runs better on Linux systems. Machine learning frameworks prefer Unix environments. Creative professionals working with AI discover that Linux provides superior performance and flexibility. The content creation boom also played a role. OBS Studio, Audacity, and Reaper work excellently on Linux, enabling professional studios without Windows dependencies. Mobile computing redefined user expectations. iOS and Android trained billions to expect devices that are secure by default, update automatically, and just work without maintenance. This psychological shift is crucial. Users who grew up with smartphones expect computers to work like phones, instantly, reliably, without technical maintenance. Windows, with its legacy architecture and desktop-centric assumptions, feels increasingly antiquated. The convergence accelerates in unexpected ways. Samsung DeX turns smartphones into desktop computers. iPad Pro rivals laptops for productivity. Many people now prefer mobile interfaces for traditionally desktop-centric tasks like banking, shopping, and light productivity work. ChromeOS brought this mobile paradigm to desktop computing, proving that operating system complexity wasn't necessary for most users. Windows market dominance made it the primary target for malware, creating an ecosystem where users expect constant security threats. Antivirus software and caution about downloads became normal. Linux approaches security fundamentally differently. Its permission system and package management make malicious software much less effective. Most Linux users never install antivirus because the attack surface is smaller and better protected. For businesses facing sophisticated cyber threats, this matters enormously. The average data breach costs exceed $4 million. When executives understand that Linux significantly reduces security risks while saving licensing costs, the decision becomes financially obvious. Privacy adds another dimension. Windows 10 and 11 include extensive telemetry that many find invasive. Linux distributions typically collect no user data by default, giving users complete privacy control, increasingly important as privacy awareness grows. Perhaps the most significant indicator of Windows' declining relevance is institutional abandonment. Governments worldwide mandate open-source solutions for sovereignty and security. The European Union has official policies favoring open-source software. France migrated police departments to Ubuntu. Germany requires agencies to evaluate open-source alternatives first. India developed its own Linux distribution for government use. These aren't pilot programs. They're massive institutional shifts involving millions of users. Educational institutions follow similar patterns. Students learning on Chromebooks expect simple web-based computing. Universities discover Linux costs less to maintain while providing superior research environments. An entire generation grows up without Windows dependencies. Government cybersecurity agencies now recommend Linux for high-security applications. When institutions responsible for national security prefer alternatives to Windows, it signals fundamental shifts in trust and confidence. Windows benefited from network effects. Everyone used it because everyone else did. Those same effects now work against Microsoft. When colleagues use Slack instead of Teams, when servers run Linux, when development tools expect Unix environments, when smartphones and tablets don't run Windows, suddenly being the only Windows user becomes the problem, not the solution. Modern collaboration tools, Zoom, Slack, Google Workspace, Notion, Figma, work identically across platforms. Platform-specific advantages disappeared, while platform-specific disadvantages, cost, security, maintenance, became more apparent. There's a generational component to this shift that's often overlooked. Users under 25 grew up with smartphones, tablets, and Chromebooks. They expect computing to be intuitive, instant, and maintenance-free. To them, Windows feels like legacy technology, complex, unreliable, and unnecessarily complicated. They don't understand why they need to manage drivers or clean the registry when their phones and tablets just work. Tell me below, what's the last task that truly forced you to use Windows? This demographic shift is accelerating the transition. As digital natives enter the workforce and make technology decisions, they gravitate toward platforms that match their smartphone-influenced expectations of how computing should work. We're witnessing the end of the operating system monopoly era. Computing is becoming multi-platform, cloud-integrated, and user-centric, rather than vendor-controlled. This doesn't mean Windows will disappear overnight. It will survive in legacy enterprise environments and specific niches. But it will no longer be the unquestioned default, the assumed foundation of personal computing. The benefits of this transition extend beyond just cost savings. Competition drives innovation across all platforms. Security improves when no single target dominates the landscape. Users gain freedom to choose tools that best fit their needs, rather than accepting vendor-imposed limitations. The assumptions that built Windows dominance have evaporated. What remains is a platform that costs more, requires more maintenance, and provides fewer advantages than alternatives. This isn't ideology, it's evolution. The computing ecosystem naturally tends toward diversity, efficiency, and user empowerment when artificial barriers are removed. The question isn't whether this shift will continue, it's how quickly it will accelerate. Are you prepared for a computing world where Windows is just one option among many? Because that world isn't coming, it's already here. Most people just haven't noticed yet.